A crimson sunset bled across the New Mexico desert, painting the sky in fire. Jack Colton, a weathered cowboy of 40, stood on the porch of his lonely ranch, his hat low, eyes scanning the horizon. The wind howled, kicking up dust like whispered secrets inside. By a crackling fire, a pair of delicate hands stirred a pot of stew. Faint purple bruise is marking the wrists. The air hung heavy, tense with something unspoken. Out here in Redstone, a gravelly voice narrated, the desert keeps a man's secrets buried deep in the sand. But when Jack Colton saw those bruises on his cook's arm, he stirred up a truth so dark, it'd rattle every soul in this town to its bones. The title burned across the screen in bold. Weathered letters, lonely rancher notices bruises on his cook. What he did next shocked the whole town. A lone guitar strummed, sharp and haunting, fading into the night dot inside the ranch's sparse kitchen, lit by a single lantern. Eliza Kane, 30, set a tin plate of stew before Jack. Her dark hair was pinned back, her face kind but guarded, like a door half closed. Jack's rugged features carried the weight of old grief, his blue eyes sharp despite the weariness in his shoulders. The room was bare faded curtains, creaking floorboards, shadows dancing on the walls. Smells better'n anything I've cooked out here, Eliza, Jack said, his voice gruff but warm. You sure got away with spices, just mackin'. Do, Mr. Colton, Eliza replied, her smile faint, eyes fixed on the plate. Ain't much to work with in this dust bowl. She turned to grab a ladle, her sleeve slipping to reveal a bruise on her wrist, purple and fresh. Jack's eyes caught it, narrowing. Eliza tugged her sleeve down fast, her smile tightening like a drawn bowstring. You all right, Eliza? Jack leaned forward, voice low. That mark on your arm don't look like no kitchen scrape. It's nothin', she said quickly, deflecting. Clumsy is all. Bumped at hauling water. Her eyes darted away, and she busied herself at the fire. Jack watched her, jaw tight, unconvinced. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, its moan echoing the tension in the room. Jack wasn't a man to pry 5 years ago. A Comanche raid stole his wife, Sarah, leaving his heart as barren as the desert. This ranch was his last stand. But something about Eliza Kane stirred a spark he thought was long dead. The next morning, Jack rode his chestnut mare into Redstone, a gritty town dwarfed by crimson mesas and endless sand. Saloons spilled laughter and off-key piano tunes, while merchants hawked wares under faded awnings. Townsfolk nodded to Jack, some whispering as he passed. Redstone, New Mexico, 1885, a place of dreamers, drifters, and men with secrets. Lately, talk swirled around Amos Reed, a cattle baron with a silver tongue and a shadow that chilled even the bravest. Inside the general store, Jack grabbed a sack of flour, overhearing to old-timers at the counter. Amos Reed's buying up half the county, one whispered. Wary, folks who say no, their barns burn, or worse. Heard he's got eyes on Colton's ranch. The other nodded. That man's trouble, mark my words. Jack's face hardened, but he stayed silent. Stepping outside, he spotted Eliza across the street, bartering with a merchant. The New Mexico sun blazed mercilessly over Jack Colton's ranch, turning the desert into a shimmering cauldron of heat. Dust clung to everything: his scuffed boots, his weathered hat, the sagging fence posts that staked his claim against the endless sand. Inside the kitchen, Eliza Kane scrubbed a cast-iron pot with fierce, almost desperate intensity, her hands moving like they could scour away more than grease. Jack leaned against the doorframe, his blue eyes sharp as flint, catching the dark bruises on her wrist. They were no longer faint purple, had deepened to a storm cloud black, joined by a fresh mark creeping up her forearm, its red edges raw and angry. Eliza flinched at a gust of wind rattling the window, her head snapping up, eyes wide with the wild panic of a deer scenting a wolf. She tugged her sleeve down fast, but Jack's jaw tightened, his gut twisting with a certainty that those marks were no accident. The desert outside howled, its winds snaking through the crimson mesas, carrying whispers of secrets older than the bones buried in the sand. Jack wasn't one for meddling 5 years ago. A Comanche raid stole his wife, Sarah, leaving his heart as barren as the cracked earth around him. He'd built walls around it, thick as the ranch's adobe, But Eliza, with her quiet resilience and guarded smiles, was prying those walls apart, stirring a protectiveness he hadn't felt since Sarah's laughter filled these rooms. Her fear, sharp and raw, hung in the air like the scent of rain before a storm. And it gnawed at him, relentless. Midday found Jack riding his chestnut mare, Daisy, into Redstone, the town a gritty pulse of life against the vast, unyielding desert. Saloon doors swung with drunken laughter. Horses snorted outside the livery, and the air buzzed with dust, whiskey, and the faint tang of sagebrush. The crimson mesas loomed beyond, their jagged edges cutting the cloudless sky like a warning. Jack tied Daisy outside the rusty Spur Saloon, its faded sign creaking in the hot breeze inside. The air was sour with sweat, smoke, and the cloying sweetness of cheap rye. The piano's off-key notes clashed with the clink of glasses and the low hum of voices. Jack leaned against the bar, nursing a whiskey, his ears tuned to a knot of ranchers huddled in a shadowed corner, their faces drawn, voices tight with fear. "That Amos Reed," one muttered, his beard flecked with tobacco, "offered me pennies for my land, said I'd regret holding out. His men been skulking round my place at night. Regret." Another spat, eyes darting to the saloon doors. "Old man Tucker said no last month. Stable burned to ash. His boy's still limpin' from what they called an accident. Ain't no coincidence." A third rancher, older, his hands gnarled as Mesquite leaned in. "Reed's got the sheriff in his pocket. Ain't no justice in Redstone less you bow to him." Jack's grip tightened on his glass, the whiskey, burning a path down his throat. Amos Reed, cattle baron with a silver tongue and a shadow that chilled even the hardest men had. Redstone in a stranglehold. Whispers of his hired muscle roughing up holdouts, burning barns, and worse trailed him like buzzards circling carrion. Jack's thoughts drifted to Eliza, her bruises flashing in his mind. He glanced out the saloon's grimy window, catching her across the street, a basket of goods cradled in her arms. She bartered with a merchant, her voice steady but her shoulders hunched, tense. A tall figure in a black coat passed close to close, his hat low, obscuring his face. Eliza froze, her basket nearly slipping, her eyes darting like a trapped animal's. She hurried down an alley, casting a nervous glance back. Jack's hand twitched toward his holster, but the man was gone, swallowed by the crowd. At the general store, Jack grabbed a sack of flour, the clerk's chatter filling the air. "Folks say Reed's got his eye on your place, Colton," the clerk said, wiping his hands on an apron. "Watch yourself. He don't take kindly to no." Jack nodded, his face stone, but his mind churned. Was Eliza tangled up with Reed? Her bruises, her fear, they pointed to something darker than a clumsy fall. He stepped outside, the sun searing his neck, and scanned the street. Eliza was gone, but the desert's vastness seemed to watch him, its silence heavy with secrets. Back at the ranch, dust draped the mesas in deep crimson, the sky bruised purple like Eliza's arms. Jack found her by the water pump, her hands trembling as she hauled a bucket up. The bruises glared under the fading light, a new mark blooming beside them, Ron red, as if someone had gripped her hard. He stepped closer, boots crunching on. The dry earth, his voice low, careful, like coaxing a spooked colt. "Eliza," he said, "those ain't no falls. Someone's hurting you. I ain't one to push, but I need the truth." "Who did this?" She froze, water sloshing over the buckets, rim soaking her boots. Her eyes met his, bright with fear, then softened, glistening with something deeper, gratitude, maybe, or trust fighting to break through. "It's nothing, Mr. Colton," she whispered, her voice brittle as dry leaves. "Just accidents. I'm clumsy. Please don't make me say more." Jack's chest tightened. Her words were a flimsy shield, her eyes screaming a truth she wouldn't let out. He reached out, his calloused hand steadying hers on the pump handle. Her skin was cool, her pulse hammering under his touch. For a heartbeat, they stood there, the desert's silence wrapping around them like a blanket, the air thick with something unspoken, a spark, fragile but kindling. Eliza's breath hitched, her fingers trembling under his. "You're a good man, Jack," she murmured, almost too soft to hear. "But some things, they're bigger than us." She pulled away, her smile forced, almost pained, and hurried back to the kitchen, her shawl fluttering like a trapped bird. That night, the desert turned restless, coyotes wailing under a thin crescent moon that hung like a blade in the sky. Jack sat on the porch, oiling his rifle, the metallic click sharp against the night's hum. Hoof beats broke the stillness, steady and deliberate, raising a prickle on his neck. 3 riders emerged from the dark. Amos Reed at the lead, his black hat gleaming under the lantern's glow, his smile all teeth and no warmth. 2 hard-eyed men flanked him, their hands resting on holsters, their faces carved from stone. Amos dismounted, his boots kicking up dust, his voice smooth as snake oil but edged with menace. "Evenin', Colton," he called, stepping closer, his shadow long and sharp. "Fine spread you got here. Lonely, though, a man like you could use some ease. I'm looking to expand my outfit. Name your price." Jack stood, rifle cradled easy in his arms, his voice flat as the desert floor. "Ain't sellin'. Reed, this land's mine. Always will be." Amos's smile didn't falter, but his eyes turned cold, like a rattler sizing up its next strike. "Think it over, friend. Men who dig in their heels. Things get messy. Barns burn. Stock goes missin'." He paused, his gaze flicking to the kitchen window, where Liz's shadow moved, unaware. "Folks get hurt." Jack's blood ran hot, his fingers tightening on the rifle. The air crackled, the desert itself holding its breath. "I don't scare easy, Reed," he said, voice low and steady. "You and your boys best ride on." The New Mexico desert swallowed the night, its vast darkness broken only by a thin crescent moon hanging low, sharp as a freshly honed blade. Jack Colton's boots crunched on the rocky trail, each step kicking up dust that shimmered faintly. In the moonlight, his breath was steady, but his heart pounded like a war drum. Driven by the shadow he'd followed from the ranch Eliza Kane, slipping through the sagebrush and jagged mesas like a ghost. He'd seen her leave, her shawl pulled tight, carrying a bundle that weighed heavier than cloth. Her bruises, her secrets, the way she'd dodged his questions, they gnawed at him, pulling him into the night like a moth to a flame. His rifle was slung across his back, his hand resting on the revolver at his hip, his gut screaming that Eliza was walking into danger or carrying it with her. The desert's wind howled, stinging his face with sand, whispering secrets older than the bones buried beneath. The trail led to an abandoned mine on Redstone's outskirts, its entrance a black maw carved into a crimson cliff, sagging timbers jutting like broken ribs. Jack crouched behind a weathered boulder, his eyes narrowing as Eliza appeared in the moonlight, her shawl fluttering like a tattered flag. She met a young man lean, with dark eyes and a single braid down his back, his stance unmistakably Comanche. Jack's breath caught, memories of the raid that stole Sarah 5 years ago flashing hot and sharp, twisting like a knife in his chest. But this wasn't violence, it was a meeting, urgent, cloaked in whispers. Eliza handed the man, Tarak, a small leather pouch, her voice low but fierce. "They're moving her tomorrow, Tarak," she said, her words sharp as flint. "Amos's men are watching the trails. We're running out of time." Jack's world spun. The truth hit like a bullet. Eliza wasn't Amos Reed's victim. She was Tarak's sister, a Comanche woman hiding behind the guise of a widow. Her bruises earned fighting off Amos's men to protect her kin. She wasn't fleeing danger, she was diving into it, working to free someone, maybe family, from Amos's grip. The cattle baron wasn't just stealing land, he was kidnapping Comanche women, using them as leverage to force tribal land sales, a secret so vile it turned Jack's stomach. Eliza's courage, her fierce loyalty to her people, burned brighter than the moonlight, and Jack felt a pang of shame for ever doubting her. Her bruises weren't weakness, they were battle scars, proof of a fight she'd waged alone. Before he could move, hooves thundered in the distance, a cloud of dust swirling. Like a storm, 5 of Amos Reed's men burst from the shadows, their rifles glinting, faces hard with menace. "Knew you'd slip up, girl," one snarled, his voice thick with cruelty. His teeth yellowed in the moonlight. Eliza spun, shoving Tarak toward the mine's dark mouth. "Run," she hissed, yanking a small knife from her shawl, its blade catching the light. Jack's heart lurched. She was no damsel, but 5 against 2 was a death sentence. The desert erupted into chaos. Jack sprang from his cover, rifle barking as he fired a shot into the sky, the crack splitting the night. "Back off," he roared, his voice echoing off the cliffs. The men whirled, startled, but didn't hesitate. Bullets flew, spitting dust and splintering rock around the mine's entrance. Jack dove behind a crumbling timber beam, his shoulders slamming against stone, pain shooting through him like fire. Tarek reappeared, a bow drawn taut, his arrow slicing through the air to pin a thug's sleeve to a timber with a thud. Eliza darted between boulders, her knife flashing as she slashed a rope one of Amos's men tried to loop around her. Her movements swift and precise, like a hawk striking. The crimson cliffs towered above, their shadows twisting in the moonlight, the desert itself a witness to the frenzy, its wind howling like a chorus of ghosts. Jack fired again, his bullet catching a thug in the leg, sending him crumpling with a curse. But a shot grazed Jack's shoulder, hot and searing, blood soaking his shirt in seconds. His vision blurred, his knees buckling, but he gritted his teeth, reloading with shaking hands, the metallic click of his rifle steadying his resolve. Eliza's eyes found his across the chaos, wide with fear not for herself, but for him. "Jack, get down," she shouted, her voice raw, desperate, cutting through the gunfire. A burly thug lunged at her, his arm raised with a heavy club, its wood glinting with nails. Eliza ducked, swift as lightning, and drove her knife into his boot, piercing leather and drawing a howl of pain. Tarek loosed another arrow, felling a second man with a shot to the shoulder. But more hooves echoed. Amos Reed himself, riding up on a black stallion, his revolver gleaming like death. His voice cut through the din, cold and commanding. "Enough," he barked, his grin sharp as a blade. "You're done, Colton, and you. Girl, your kin won't save you now. Neither will this fool." Jack staggered to his feet, blood dripping down his arm, his rifle trained on Amos. "You're the one done, Reed," he growled, voice steady despite the pain burning through him. "This ends tonight." Eliza stood between Jack and Tarek, her knife raised, her face fierce with defiance, her braid loose and whipping in the wind. The desert's silence roared, the wind swirling dust like a shroud, the cliff standing sentinel over the standoff. Amos's men hesitated, their numbers thinning, but his grin was cold, unyielding, his eyes glinting with malice. "This ain't over," he spat, wheeling his horse. "You'll pay. All of you. Blood for blood." Eliza rushed to Jack, her hands pressing against his wounded shoulder, her touch firm but trembling, blood staining her fingers. "You're hurt bad," she whispered, her voice breaking, eyes glistening in the moonlight. "Why'd you follow me, Jack? This ain't your fight." "Didn't have a choice," Jack said, meeting her gaze, his breath ragged but his eyes steady. "Couldn't let you face this alone." Her face softened, a flicker of something deeper passing between them, trust, raw and unspoken, binding, then tighter than any rope. Tarek knelt beside them, his dark eyes meeting Jack's, a silent nod of respect passing between them. "You're a good man, Colton," Tarek said, his voice low, steady. "She needs that." The trio stumbled into the mine's depths, the darkness swallowing them as Amos's remaining men regrouped outside, their shouts echoing. Jack's wound throbbed, each step a knife in his shoulder, but Eliza's hand on his arm kept him grounded, her touch a lifeline. Tarek scouted ahead, his steps silent as a shadow, navigating the tunnels like he was born to them. The desert above seemed to hum, its crimson cliffs hiding their escape, the air thick with the scent of dust and gunpowder. Amos's threat lingered in Jack's mind, but so did Eliza's truth. She wasn't just a cook, not just a widow. She was a fighter, risking everything for her kin, and Jack knew he'd stand by her, no matter the cost. They emerged in a hidden canyon, the moon casting long shadows over the sandy floor, the walls glowing faintly red. Eliza tore a strip from her shawl, binding Jack's wound with steady hands, her fingers brushing his skin, sending a jolt through him despite the pain. "I didn't want you in this," she murmured, her voice soft but fierce, her eyes locked on his. "My cousin, she's one of the women Amos took. I came to Redstone to get her back. Those bruises, they're from his men, trying to stop me." Jack's hand closed over hers, gentle but firm, the desert's silence wrapping around them. "Not anymore," he said, his voice low, resolute. "Your fight's mine now." The spark between them flared, fragile but fierce, a promise forged. In blood and moonlight, Tarek watched the horizon, his bow ready, his face etched with determination. The New Mexico desert dawn broke in a blaze of gold, its crimson mesas casting long shadows over the hidden canyon where Jack Colton, Eliza Kane, and Tarek crouched. Jack's shoulder throbbed. The makeshift bandage Eliza had tied now stiff with dried blood, but his eyes burned with resolve. The air was cool, scented with sagebrush, and the faint tang of gunpowder from last night's fight. Eliza knelt beside him, her face etched with worry, her hands checking his wound with a tenderness that made his chest ache. Tarek scouted the canyon's edge, his bow slung across his back, his dark eyes scanning the horizon for Amos Reed's men. The desert hummed, its silence heavy, as if it knew the storm wasn't over. Jack's mind churned. Eliza's truth had shaken him. She wasn't just a cook, she was Tarek's sister, a Comanche woman risking everything to save her cousin from Amos's kidnapping ring. Her bruises, her fear were badges of a fight she'd waged alone until now. Jack's ranch, his last, tied to Sarah, felt small against the injustice Eliza faced. He glanced at her, her braid loose, her eyes fierce yet soft, and felt a fire kindling, a purpose he hadn't known since his wife's death. "We can't hide forever," Tarek said, his voice low, steady, as he returned to their makeshift camp. "Amos will hunt us. We take him down in Redstone, where the town can see." Eliza nodded, her knife gleaming at her belt. "Tarek's got letters proof Amos is still in tribal land, holding our women to force deals. If we get those too, the townsfolk, they'll turn on him." Jack's jaw tightened. "Sheriff's in Amos's pocket. Won't be easy." "Then we make it public," Eliza said, her voice fierce. "Force their hand. They can't ignore the truth in front of their eyes." Jack met her gaze, her courage pulling him like a tide. "All right," he said. "We ride to Redstone, and this today." The trio trekked back, the desert's heat rising with the sun, dust clinging to their clothes. Redstone buzzed as they entered, its streets alive with merchants, drifters, and wary glances. The town hall, a weathered building with a sagging porch, was packed for a community meeting. Ranchers, shopkeepers, and families murmuring about Amos's growing shadow. Jack, Eliza, and Tarek slipped in, keeping to the back, Jack's wound hidden under a fresh shirt, his revolver heavy at his hip. Eliza clutched the pouch of letters, her knuckles white, while Tarek's eyes darted, tracking every face. Amos stood at the front, his black hat gleaming, his smile smooth as ever. "Folks," he drawled, "I'm offering prosperity. Sell your land, join my outfit, and Redstone thrives. Fight me, and you lose everything." Murmurs rippled, some nodding, others shifting uneasily. Jack felt the crowd's fear, thick as the dust outside. Eliza stepped forward, her voice cutting through the hum like a blade. "He's lyin'," she shouted, holding up the pouch. "Amos Reed ain't offerin' prosperity, he's sellin' it. These letters prove he's taken Comanche women, forcing their kin to give up land. He's a thief and worse." The crowd gasped, eyes wide. Amos's smile faltered, his hand twitching toward his revolver. "Lies from a nobody cook," he sneered. "You got no proof." Tarek moved beside Eliza, his presence steady, his voice calm but commanding. "Letters from your own men, Reed. Signed orders to kidnap my cousin, to burn ranches that don't sell. You're done." The sheriff, a paunchy man with Amos's brand on his soul, stood. "Enough. Arrest her for slander." Jack stepped forward, his voice low but carrying like thunder. "Not today, Sheriff. These folks deserve the truth." He pulled a folded paper from his coat. The deed to his ranch, his last tie to Sarah, to his old life. His heart twisted, but he held it high. "I'm giving this to the town. Fund a legal fight against Reed. Lawyers, marshals, whatever it takes to bring him down. Who's with me?" The crowd stirred, whispers turning to shouts. An old rancher stood. "I'm in, Colton. Reed burned my barn last spring." A shopkeeper followed. "He threatened my family. I'm done bowing." One by one, the townsfolk rose, their voices a growing roar. Amos's face darkened, his hand jerking to his revolver. "You'll regret this, Colton," he snarled, drawing. Fast, Jack was faster, his own gun clearing its holster, knocking Amos's weapon to the floor with a precise shot. The crowd surged, pinning Amos's men, who'd drawn too late. The sheriff hesitated, then backed down, his loyalty crumbling under the town's fury. Amos lunged for Eliza, his knife flashing, but Jack tackled him, pain exploding in his wounded shoulder. They hit the floor, dust swirling, fists flying. Eliza grabbed Amos's arm, twisting it until he dropped the blade, her strength born of months fighting in the shadows. Tarek pinned one of Amos's men, the letters scattered but safe. The townsfolk swarmed, binding Amos and his thugs with ropes, their cheers echoing off the hall's rafters. As the sheriff, shamed, cuffed Amos, Jack staggered to his feet, blood seeping through his shirt. Eliza caught him, her hands steadying him, her eyes bright with relief and something deeper. "You didn't have to give it all up," she whispered, her voice thick. "Your ranch, it's everything." "Not everything," Jack said, his hand brushing hers, the touch warm despite the chaos. "Some things are worth more." Their eyes locked, the air between them electric, a promise of something new taking root in the ashes of his past. Outside, the desert stretched endless under a blazing sun, its crimson mesas standing watch as Amos was dragged to the jail. The New Mexico desert bloomed under a golden sunrise, its crimson mesas glowing like embers against a boundless sky. Jack Colton's ranch stood quieter now, its weathered fences and adobe walls bathed in soft light. Months had passed since the showdown in Redstone's town hall, and the air felt lighter, free of Amos Reed's shadow. Jack stood on the porch, his shoulders still stiff from the wound, but his eyes were clear, bright with a purpose he hadn't known in years. Beside him, Eliza Kane carried a basket of fresh-baked cornbread, her braid catching the morning sun, her smile no longer guarded but warm like the desert after a rare rain. The wind whispered softly, carrying the scent of sagebrush and hope, as if the land itself had exhaled. Inside the ranch house, the kitchen hummed with life. Eliza set the table, her movements easy, her laughter mingling with Jack's low chuckle. As he carved a slab of venison, their hands brushed as she passed him a plate, a fleeting touch that sparked like flint on steel. The loneliness that once haunted these walls was gone, replaced by something new, a partnership, a quiet love taking root like mesquite in hard earth. Jack had given up his ranch's deed to fund Redstone's fight against Amos, but he'd rebuilt, plank by plank, with Eliza by his side. The desert stretched beyond, its vastness no longer a weight but a promise, its golden hues mirroring the warmth between them. In Redstone, the town thrived, its streets bustling with renewed vigor. The saloon's piano played brighter tunes, and merchants called out wares without fear. Tarek strode through the market, his bow slung across his back, his face calm but proud. At his side was his cousin, Nita, freed from Amos's clutches, her eyes bright with gratitude. She hugged Eliza tightly, their reunion a silent testament to the fight they'd won. Tarek caught Jack's gaze across the crowd, offering a nod. Respect, kinship, forged in the heat of that moonlit battle. Jack returned it, his heart full, knowing he'd found allies worth more than land. The desert watched, its crimson cliffs standing sentinel, their shadows softer now, as if at peace. Amos Reed rotted in a territorial jail, his empire dust, his men scattered or locked away. Redstone's folks still whispered of Jack's sacrifice, how he'd given his ranch to spark their rebellion, how Eliza's courage and Tarek's proof had broken Amos's grip. The town was reborn, its heart beating with defiance, and the desert seemed to hum, its secrets safe in the hands of those who'd fought for it. A narrator's voice broke the quiet, warm and steady. In 1880's New Mexico, the Comanche faced a world that tried to break them. Land theft and violence were common, but their kinship networks, families like Eliza and Tarek's, held strong. Their horsemanship and tracking skills, honed over centuries, outwitted even the sharpest cowboys. Tarek's arrows, Eliza's courage, they weren't just survival. They were defiance, a legacy that shaped the West. The scene shifted to Jack and Eliza riding side by side, their horses kicking up dust as they headed toward the horizon. The sun climbed higher, painting the desert gold, their silhouettes fading into the vastness. Jack's hand rested on his saddle, close to Eliza's, a quiet promise of a future unwritten but shared. The desert stretched endless, its beauty fierce and timeless, a witness to their story. The narrator's voice returned, warm with invitation. Did Jack's sacrifice shock you? What would you have done in his boots, facing a man like Amos? Read. Drop a comment below and tell us, would you give up everything for justice? If this tale of courage and love hit home, smash that like button and subscribe for more Western adventures. Ride with us, and let's keep the stories of the West alive. The screen lingered on the desert, a lone hawk circling above, its cry echoing over the mesas as the golden light swelled, fading to black.